I had Spencer Pratt on my podcast the other day. I think
What'd
it drops. You know what? I know I'm supposed to hate him. I don't.
His profession is to be the screaming jerk on reality shows, and his house burns down. And even though he had no private insurance on his house and doesn't believe in climate change, he is understandably upset about his house burning down.
So Election Day is tomorrow in Los Angeles, and the Democrats are freaking out, at least a little bit. And I know that because they're currently trotting out the celebrity endorsements, which always, even if it's just an insurance policy, shows that typically Democrats expect that maybe something can go wrong, which does say a lot given this is Los Angeles, and you would think you would not need to have a bunch of pathetic, washed-up celebrities go out and rally for Karen Bass in order to get her over the finish line. But that is really indicative of this race as a whole. Even if Bass is the favorite, and even if Pratt is still fighting an uphill battle, the fact that we're making Democrats sweat in such a deep blue stronghold of theirs, and by the way, as I've made the case many times, telling a good national story. This is the type of candidate in Spencer Pratt you want to be getting in headlines. You want to sort of define the midterms across the country. It's not really creating all that good of feelings amongst the Democrat Party. And by the way, we do have some early vote data out of Decision Desk that is backing up this idea that I'm not saying Democrats are losing. Again, it's Los Angeles, but they seem to be underperforming very massively. And the Spencer Pratt surge is indeed real. And it will say something. Let's say, for example, that just both Bass and Pratt advance to the general election, but hey, Pratt narrowly gets more votes than Bass in the jungle primary. I mean, that's a statement, right? That is something that, frankly, I would argue would energize our people nationwide. And, at that point, national media cannot ignore this guy as if they already have been doing so. And that's a good thing. We want eyes on Spencer Pratt. We want this, honestly, to be a nationalized race in a sense. Not that it's connected to Trump, but rather that people in swing districts and all across the country see the side-by-side. Oh, Spencer Pratt, common sense, pragmatic, moderate Republican, and indicative of just someone who's standing against the far left insanity that Karen Bass and Nithya Raman ultimately represent. I think that's very important. But nonetheless, we'll bring you this here today, as well as some of the pathetic attempts by the Bass campaign to surge support, including calling good old Jimmy Kimmel. That is right. This idiot is interjecting as if people care what he has to say. We'll talk about it, guys. First, though, do us a favor. If you enjoy our content, make sure you hit that like button down below. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. That is the best way to support our work, and it also ensures that you can stay up to date with all of the latest news and coverage. And that said, according to Decision Desk, look at some of the early vote data. So we have the early in-person voting in Los Angeles as of May 30th. Take a look at this. Republicans are actually leading. That is right, 42% Republicans, 38% Democrats, 20% other or independent or no party. And keep in mind, this is merely by party registration. This is not accounting for the fact that likely because Pratt is sort of a reach across the aisle candidate, and I can attest firsthand, there are actually Democrats who can't stand Trump but are sort of pro-Pratt because they're just so fed up with homelessness, for example. Keep in mind, I don't think all of the Democrats, for example, who are just registered with the D on the ballot information necessarily will be going for Pratt or Raman. So, this is definitely data you cannot deny. In Los Angeles County is a big deal. What the heck? Republicans are leading any metric in early voting. And sure, don't get me wrong. Mail-in ballots, as you know, are very rampant in California. This is a major reason why Spencer Pratt, even if he overperforms, even if he has a respectable showing, is really fighting an uphill battle. And so I'm not saying, oh, look, this is proof the Republicans are going to win. But it could be proof, hey, again, these results might tell a story, and, I guess never say never. By the way, statewide in California, we're witnessing a very similar pattern where, once again, Republicans, at least in the early in-person vote, are actually narrowly leading Democrats in turnout. And the theory we posed on this in the last video was actually the fact that, well, a lot of, honestly, Democrats in California are rather demoralized, or at the very least not that energized, because you look at who's leading the Democrat ticket in many cases, Xavier Becerra, Karen Bass. Are these exactly the type of people who are energizing or galvanizing the voters? No, ironically, it's Republicans in California who seem to be bucking the typical midterm trend, and actually they have the energy, which, if for whatever reason that can be replicated nationwide, I would say, honestly, would indicate very good things for the midterms. We'll see if that happens. But just want to point this out, okay? it's not looking too bad for Los Angeles standards, which is perhaps the reason why, again, they have to start trotting out losers like Jimmy Kimmel, who, well, had the following to say. All right, let's just take a listen, break down, and analyze his very idiotic comments on why his audience should not vote for Spencer Pratt and why actually, I don't know, Karen Bass is a fantastic mayor or something, the implication there being.
This city is a mess. That is something that became especially obvious during the fires. But the people running the city, when you say this place is a mess, they go, no, actually it isn't. We're doing a lot. And then we look around and go, I'm not seeing it. Frustrated because nothing seems to change. So then you get a guy who was on a reality show. His profession is to be the screaming jerk on reality shows. And his house burns down. And even though he had no private insurance on his house and doesn't believe in climate change, he is understandably upset about his house burning down. It's hard not to agree with what he has to say. He's angry about the same problems a lot of people here are angry about. Does he have solutions to those problems? No. And yet he's polling in second place. So if you don't want to vote for Karen Bass on June 2nd, I get it. Well, you better find somebody else to vote for, and preferably somebody who isn't wasting our time and money to get himself back on television.
Yeah, so I think it's pretty undeniable that Democrats are, at the very least, a little bit nervous about this guy. And thinking about the social circles, for example, that Jimmy Kimmel runs in, I seem to detect this overall attitude that even some liberal-leaning people who are just fed up with kitchen table issues in Los Angeles, and again, not saying they like Trump or ICE or they're hardcore Republicans by any means, but are sort of opening up to what Pratt is talking about because he's sticking to those very common sense practical issues that affect everyone's daily lives. By the way, Republicans nationwide, take notes because this is how you run a very effective and winning campaign. Absolutely, that's true. But you notice how Kimmel is even forced to really admit, yeah, the city's being grossly mismanaged, but then, which by the way, I would argue is a concession to Spencer Pratt, right? It's a concession that obviously Karen Bass and the Democrats do not know how to govern, but then he tries to flip it all the way back to the original script. Oh, well, the climate change, guys. Yeah, that's what the Palisades fire was caused by. Despite the fact that you just admitted the city was grossly mismanaged. And by the way, do you notice how Democrats always, especially Karen Bass and California Democrats, always use climate change as an excuse for their own failures, right? You know, okay, fine. Let's say that climate change was the reason for the fire, even though I have my questions there. What do you plan to do about it then, right? How's Karen Bass can't magically fix climate change? Have you considered, I don't know, maybe making the infrastructure a little bit more secure, helping with forest management? Generally making sure that stuff doesn't happen? No. But okay, all of that in mind, you notice too how in the end, Kimmel really doesn't have an argument against Pratt. And this is my favorite thing to watch with all of the Democrats who are kind of trying to come together is, you know, she basically says, oh, well, he may diagnose the problems, but he doesn't have the solutions. Okay, well, are you going to be specific about that? What specifically is Spencer Pratt wrong about? What solution of his doesn't work? By the way, the Democrats currently in charge of Los Angeles are not even diagnosing the problem. So clearly they don't have the solution either. And notice how in the end he just evolves to, Spencer Pratt was a guy on TV. That's why he's not a serious candidate. Said by the guy currently on TV. But this is honestly a very common trend for whatever reason I notice with many of my political opponents, frankly, whether that's Jimmy Kimmel or Thomas Massie supporters, is that very often they'll try to attribute bad faith or bad motives from people without ever addressing the actual arguments. And, you know, this is usually the way you can tell someone in politics actually is just lost, right? They don't have an argument, they're not winning, is, look, don't get me wrong, I understand this is politics. And so very often we too will have conversations of attributing motives to people like, hey, this person is corrupt and that's why they're saying this, or this is this person's ulterior intent in trying to, you know, make this argument or believe this ideology or whatever. But notice how every single time we do that, we also will stop and explain what's wrong with what they're actually saying, right? And for example, you have Thomas Massie supporters, like I'll do a 30-minute video debunking the argument for Massie and, you know, all these issues that he's wrong about. And then the first comment is what? Haha, this video was paid for by Israel or something like that. And it's like, you notice every single time they won't actually address the argument. They'll just say, oh, did you get paid $7,000? And then it's the same thing here with Jimmy Kimmel, right? You're a reality TV star, dude. You're just wrong. Why is he wrong? They don't have an answer. But this is actually a recurring pattern because Democrats in general in Los Angeles do not have an answer to why Spencer Pratt is wrong. You know why? Because he's actually correct. That's why they always resort to just saying, well, he's a reality TV star. That makes him disqualified. As if Nithya Raman's experience on the city council makes her superbly qualified for office or something like that. And by the way, it's Los Angeles. You're attacking people who were on TV. What an incoherent, line to be bringing. But I'd point out too, by the way, it's not just Kimmel. Karen Bass and other Democrats are running the exact same thing, which I repeat, is not an actual argument.
Well, I think for the undecided voters to understand that they have a choice to make. And that choice is a reality TV villain? Really? How did that work for us on a national level? That's one choice. The other choice is a city council person who's been in City Hall twice as long as I have.
We have a choice. Do we choose a TV reality star villain? Saying he was a villain and taking pride in that, but we don't need villains in the city. No, we don't. And we don't need another person who was on city council who says it's okay for encampments to be in front of schools.
You see exactly what I'm saying? Democrats do not even know how to attack Spencer Pratt. Even Karen Bass herself, the only thing she has to say is, well, he was a bad guy on reality TV. Okay, who cares? And notice the contrast. She has substance against the other Democrat, Nithya Raman. Yes, that is a policy-driven argument. We don't need homeless encampments in front of schools, as we've ripped Raman apart many times for saying that is something that she supports because she is a pro-homeless fentanyl addict lunatic. But when it comes to Spencer Pratt, he was on TV. Oh no. What? But they're flailing. They're desperate. They don't actually know how to come after this guy because guess what? There's very little you can attack him on because he's correct on the issues. And when you view the current state of Los Angeles as an overall indictment, not just of Karen Bass, but really of Democrats as a whole, there's just not a lot that's defensible because the city objectively has been poorly run in basically every single way. By the way, as it pertains to celebrity endorsements, here's Spencer Pratt once again just destroying his opposition. Take a listen to what he had to say in response to a lot of the washed up celebrities that Karen Bass tried to pull out in order to maybe rally some votes before this primary, before it ends in a complete embarrassment for her.
You have celebrities that are now coming out in support of you, but they will deny it, won't they? Leo DiCaprio, Jamie Foxx?
What I've learned is I actually don't want celebrities to come out and endorse me. I don't want anybody to endorse me except for the moms and the animal lovers in LA. That's my entire vote.
Yeah.
Because that's, So I'm cool if no celebrity ever endorsed me. I actually love when the celebrities attack me because then I'm like, oh, I'm doing so well.
But I mean, DiCaprio, did it happen?
It did. That was,
Yeah.
I love Titanic. It was a great movie.
I mean, come on. He is just too good at this. But guys, don't you know, he was a reality TV star villain. That's so bad. No, you know what? Los Angeles needs a reality TV star villain right now. I'm actually going to come out and say it. Not super familiar with this show. What was he on the Hills or something like that? I'd never seen it in my life, but from what I've gathered learning about him, I guess his sort of role on the show was to be the bully, kind of like the rich a-hole. No, you know what? Actually, Los Angeles needs that right now because it's a total freak show, right? And you need actually the snobby guy with standards who's going to crack down on antisocial behavior to an extent, right? You need actually the mean bully to come in and tell the entire city this freak show needs to stop, to be completely honest with you, right? There's way too many antisocial weirdos have taken over city council. They've taken over government. They're driving local politics. Yeah, let's actually bring in the reality TV star villain, okay? Call them all sorts of names. That's exactly what we need. Make them cry. But okay, so all of that in mind, now shifting to the election itself, I'd point out as well, the typical shenanigans are indeed starting to take place, which is pretty telling for a guy who's supposed to lose by a lot, right? Clearly not. Apparently, on one hand, Karen Bass got caught red-handed, and Spencer Pratt has filed a complaint about it. I'm not sure it's going to go anywhere given the Democrats are in charge. But apparently, she was actually caught electioneering illegally, right? You're not allowed to be within 100 feet of a polling place, and here she is allegedly just within 100 feet of a polling place, very smart. Obviously, maybe there's an extent of Democrat cockiness that they're allowed to get away and break any rules they want. But at the same time, I don't know. Clearly, if this is a widespread campaign strategy of Karen Bass, they're kind of ramping up because they're like, shoot, we need to make sure people don't have last-minute thoughts at the ballot box. Likewise, mail-in ballots in LA today were apparently being found burned, and a voting center was vandalized within just one day of Spencer Pratt's, kind of potential here. The narrative being, hey, he might pull an upset, he might do something impressive. So I'm not going to immediately attribute, we don't know the suspect or whatever, but I'm just going to say that would be in total character of, let's say, people who don't like Spencer Pratt to engage in, again, antisocial and often violent behavior. So there you have it, guys. If you have not voted yet in Los Angeles or California as a whole, make sure Election Day is tomorrow. And do not sit this one out, right? Even if you're like, oh, we're not going to win. Okay, fine. We need to make a statement, though. I'm just telling you right now, if Spencer Pratt does well and becomes a national icon for the GOP in the midterms, that is a massive boost for us, right? This is the election we want to be talked about nationally. So let's get that done and make sure Spencer Pratt does as well as possible and hopefully inspires a revolution of really his type of politics, especially at the local level, because this is actually, I would argue, the way Republicans need to frame themselves as just normal, well-adjusted people who don't get into like crazy out there stuff, but rather just talk about the things people care about, be generally relatable, seem like a normal human being next to the absolute freak show, the antisocial freak show that is the Democrat Party and its voter base. And hey, look at what you can do sometimes. It is quite impressive. That's a model for sure. It needs to translate. Make sure you go vote. And that said, guys, let me know your thoughts. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you are new. And until next time, God bless and peace.